Morning, everybody. Welcome to UTRCA's May 2025 meeting. Call the meeting to order at 9:30 a.m. Welcome colleagues, staff members, and members of the public. As a reminder, Emily Chandler is serving as our meeting host. So if those of you online have connection problems or issues with the technology, please contact Emily through the chat feature. Today's meeting is being live streamed on the UTRCA's YouTube channel. Please refrain from whispers or side conversation while the meeting is running, as they could get picked up by the microphones. As always, when the squares glow red, your microphones are muted. If you're a board member attending online, please have your camera turned on during the meeting, especially during the voting and during the session when applicable. We have received regrets from board member Brian Petrie, as well as board member Tom Heeman. We have board members online with us, Scotty, Arj, Peter, and Skylar. Welcome and good morning. I will next read our territorial acknowledgement. We will begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape peoples, who have long-standing relationships to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. Local First Nation communities of this area include the Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, Munsee Delaware Nation, and Delaware Nation at Moraviantown. In the region, there are 11 First Nation communities and a growing Indigenous urban population. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and of all of the original peoples of Turtle Island, North America. All right, I will ask Michelle if there are any modifications to the agenda that was circulated to the members.
No modifications.
Okay. Seeing none, I'll ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest to be made at this time by the board members. Okay, none noted, but if at any time during the meeting, should the situation arise, please notify the chair so that we can deal with it accordingly. Item 4, presentations, delegations. There are none today. Item 5, administrative business, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting for April 22nd, 2025. George, the resolution reads that the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board of Directors approve the Board of Directors minutes, including any closed session minutes dated April 22nd, 2025. George, you'll move that. Seconder, please. Jean, thank you. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5.2, business arising from the minutes. None are noted by the chair, but I'll offer the opportunity to board members to speak to that. Seeing none, okay, we will carry on. Item 6, reports for consideration. 6.1, budget concepts. Or sorry, my mistake. 5.3, correspondence. None noted by the chair, but I'll check with board members, staff. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 6, reports for consideration. First item is budget concepts. I guess at this time, I would like to ask board member Cuddy, you had submitted a motion. Peter, did you want to speak to that?
Well, I would, Chair. Thank you, and through you. But I understood from the note from Tracy last night that I require 7 days advance notification, and I don't think I'm going to get 2/3 today. So why don't we just say that I'll table this till the next meeting?
Okay, so you're withdrawing your motion until you'll resubmit it prior to the June meeting, correct?
That's right. I guess, and I'll have to ask you, Chair, and ask Tracy if I need to resubmit it or it just moves forward to the next meeting.
Okay, staff, could you respond to that, please?
Yep, we can certainly include it at the notices of motion under this meeting, so we'll read it out at that point. Which is item 10 on our agenda,
Which means it ends up on the June agenda.
which will end up on the June.
So we'll hold your motion until we get to item 10, notice of motion.
That's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Good.
Tracy.
All right, so item 6.1, we have the presentation from staff regarding budget concept.
Okay, thank you, Chair, through you. Just a few notes about budget concepts and communications overview report in your package. At this point in our budget process, this is the concepts time. We do not have a budget prepared yet. The intent is to gather some initial feedback from our members in order to draft our 2026 budget. As noted in the report, there's a number of key drivers to prepare our draft budget. We recognize that through the City of London's multi-year budget process for 2026, there was a 6.9% increase. But with that, in the London's process, I know it's a bit confusing. London actually blends some of our operating and capital together. So any capital where the city does not pay 100%, it's actually included in that general tax levy and blended together. So structures like Wildwood and Pittock, would it be included in that blended amount? Whereas capital that is 100% contributed and special benefiting by the City of London, like West London Dykes and Fanshawe Dam here, are entirely funded through the water and wastewater rates. So it is a little bit confusing. I know we've heard from the mayor and we've committed to working towards those goals, but the system and how London identifies and merges our budgets together make it a little bit more complex. They also split our budget 40% to the general tax rate and 60% to the water and wastewater rate. So just wanted to highlight some of those complexities when it comes to the London budget, but certainly recognize that there is a potential to have some additional ongoing discussion, especially with staff, to look at if there's other ways some of our capital amounts that vary year over year that are not always 100% money could be moved over to that water and wastewater rate as well. Typically, it's anything that's dealing with water quantity or water quality is appropriate in the water and wastewater rates anyway. So we're looking forward to more discussion with staff to look at different opportunities there. The other piece that we don't have yet, it's outlined in the report, is the apportionment amongst our member municipalities. We look at and receive from the province the modified current value assessment. We receive that annually from the province, typically in August, September time period. So once we have that, we will have the draft budget in August, and then we'll apply how that budget is apportioned to all of our member municipalities. Certainly when we're looking at the report and to develop our budget, we have our timeline that's provided there. We recognize most of our costs are related to staffing and wages. We're looking at our capital costs and any other costs that could be increasing as well, from insurance to tax rates that for our own properties. We have quite a range from municipal taxes and increases that we're seeing there. And then, as I mentioned, looking at modified current value assessment to offset or to apportion those costs. We also have the significant input from the project with the Canada Water Agency. That funding, although it's a Category 3 program, it contributes to our overhead costs to reduce those costs. we're always looking for other opportunities to offset any increases and incorporate those into our budgeting process as well. Along with our budgeting process, we establish our budget communications to ensure that we have information that's going out to our member municipalities. We're asking for some early input from our financing committee on those communications, depending on what the key drivers are each year. We want to make sure we're communicating out consistently and our messages are heard. So with that, can certainly answer any questions. And Christine's here as well to provide her expert wisdom as well.
Right, thanks, Tracy. Board members, any questions or comments for staff? I'll start with you. Go ahead, please.
Through you, by reading through that, roughly if you raise the levy 1%, does that bring in about $156,000?
You know, the
Answer
answer.
sounds about right. Without doing the math.
Okay, no, it's just that when you're at a municipality, that's always what you think is how, if you raise the budget 1%, how much revenue does it bring in? So, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. This may be more relevant to the discussion we'll have in June with the motion or the notice of motion, but first thing off, I mean, I grant we don't get the modified current value assessment until late, but you know, this province isn't doing a new assessment, so I'm really not expecting a heck of a big shift. So London pays roughly 65% of the levy, is that correct?
That's correct.
Right, so one of the implications of changing London's levy amount is it has a much bigger effect on the budget than just that portion. In order to meet what London wants, it means a bigger reduction beyond the 1.5%. So yeah, we need to see that. The tricky part, I guess, in terms of where the mayor and the budget chief were in their discussions with us when they were here, is that the city's budget committee is meeting, I think, a day or two before our June meeting. So trying to line everybody up is going to be a bit of a trick, but I appreciate that the chair has been keeping the budget chair and the mayor up to date. So we are in communication on the political level. The other piece, though, which I want to know where staff are going to be between now and the June meeting, is what Tracy alluded to, which is the really interesting and different part of how London pays its share of the levy, in that only 40% of the levy is funded through the tax base, whereas the rest of it's through the wastewater and water budgets. But that balance, that split, as I understand it, was developed a number of years ago, prior to all the changes that we got hit with from the province. So, and you know, maybe even before the multi-year budget process, I don't, you know, it could be a very useful exercise if our staff are talking to the city finance staff and have a recommendation if there's going to be a change to that. And maybe it's project by project, I don't know. But that we have that information for June, which I think will help us further with this budget dilemma, the overall budget, obviously, but also the city's request. So maybe through the chair to staff, this seems to be the time of year when we start talking, our staff start talking to city staff. So will the timing work that by our June 24th meeting, we'll have some more information to help us in the discussion of budget?
Look to staff.
I'm looking to Christine as well, but I think some preliminary input, as you'd said, the division between the city tax rate and the wastewater and water budgets was quite some time ago, and it was well before the changes in regulation. So even just doing a high level preliminary analysis of what that looks like And I believe it was the last multi-year budget cycle is when that was first implemented. At the time, really just looking at what projects and programs do we provide that are related to water quality or water quantity. And then it was just estimated at that time, the 60-40 split and where it was appropriate. And I think it has to look at that, number one, but then also look at the capital side. And the structures. So I think at a very high level, that's something we can come back to.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's odd that our capital is considered their operating in some cases. So it's more complicated than a simple, let's take 1.5% and be done with it. Unfortunately, it's gonna take a little bit of work, and I'm glad to hear that we'll have more information for June.
Paul, go ahead, please.
Yeah, and through the chair, I apologize to staff for not emailing this question in, but I just thought of it as I was sitting here. And under capital project costs, it says the Wildwood Dam gates are unexpectedly not currently operating optimally. To me, sounds kind of scary when dam gates sounds expensive. What does not working optimally mean? And how crucial is it that repairs be done as soon as possible on this?
Chris, to answer that one.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The not optimally is just a brief overview. We're having a problem of getting them sealed. And a little bit of leakage through a gate, a low level gate like that is a bit of a problem. And if that leakage is more than just a bit, it's actually more than our summer output. We've always been able to get them closed and sealed enough, but it's becoming more and more of a challenge for them to actually seal. So I think that's kind of the detail that you're looking for. It's not that we're having a problem opening them. And typically they close, they just don't get closed that last amount. This was a problem historically, and the solution at that point in time was to add ballast to the gates to help them close, but we're still having problems getting them closed that last bit so that they can seal up. And so it's gotten to the point where we need to consider what can be done about it. And it's important, therefore, that we start an investigation into what our alternatives are so that we can properly plan for those expenditures. Those expenditures will be large, likely done in conjunction with painting the gates, which was in our 20-year plan. But it would be incremental on top of removing the painting.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that it's been a ongoing issue that's just getting a little bit worse and worse, and it's better to address it. It's not like all of a sudden they've broken and the dam can't be operated efficiently at all. It's just not working as good as it should.
Perhaps if I can add some additional clarification too. The impact of not being able to get them sealed means that we would be releasing more water than we should, more water than we would like to. Therefore, the water level in the reservoir is going to draw down faster than desirable. So the implications are that we're actually augmenting flow more than we want to, which isn't that much of a problem other than for the reservoir. Right? It raises into concern our ability to continue the augmentation through the entire season, but it would risk the recreational use if we're putting out 2-3 times what we would like to be putting out in that early summer period, dry summer period. That's where the challenge.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Any further questions? Looking to our online members, any questions? Don't see any. Yeah, just to, I guess, follow up on comments already made. I've copied, board members on the follow-up communications that I've had with Mayor Morgan and Budget Chair Pelosi, highlighting that we're continuing our budget process and always willing to work with the city in those discussions. As Tracy has mentioned, staff have not yet prepared the budget, but we have received a report at our April meeting where staff identified a number of projects underway, and Tracy's updated that further. Staff has updated that further in this report. Many initiatives are still underway that will go towards funding the development of our 2026 budget. And for the staff's attention and the board's attention, I've also scheduled or requested to schedule an in-person meeting with the mayor just to have an in-person conversation about what's been communicated so far. Hopefully we can meet before the June 11th city budget committee meeting, but our meeting date will be a function of the availability of both the mayor and myself. So any developments on that front, I will keep board members apprised accordingly. So I don't see anybody else on the speakers list with questions or comments. So the recommendation before us is there's 4 parts. That the 2026 budget concepts report be received. Part 2, that the 2026 draft budget be developed in conformity Conservation Authorities Act, CAA, and Ontario Regulation 402/22 budget and apportionment. Part 3, that staff be directed to include a provision for a wage grade increase of 3% and address inflationary pressures as expected. Part 4, that staff be directed to prepare a budget communications overview to circulate to the Finance and Audit Committee for feedback before being finalized. Is there a mover for that recommendation? Paul, seconder, Sandy?
Yeah, seconded, but
Okay.
also a quick question
Yes.
on D. Are we meeting as a Finance and Audit Committee after the June meeting? Or is the plan to circulate that to the members ahead of the board meeting so that we can provide feedback? I'm just trying to figure out the timing that the staff have in mind about the communication piece.
Yeah, through the chair, the communication piece intended to be accompanying when we have the full draft budget. So yeah, in advance of the October meeting when the full draft is considered. Remember the date off the top of my head on the previous Finance and Audit Committee.
September 23rd.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so the recommendation has been read, moved by Paul, seconded by Sandy. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.2, the administrative bylaw annual review, and staff has a report prepared for that. I'll turn it over to Tracy with that report, please.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. Just a number of amendments as we review the report or administrative bylaw annually. And just as a reminder, the administrative bylaw is something that all conservation authorities have and post on their governance section of their website. And we worked quite closely with Conservation Ontario to develop a template used by all CAs. And then we had Nigel Belchamber review it a few years ago as well. With that, a few updates to incorporate and to reflect some of the changes that were made to Ontario Regulation 482 regarding our levy apportionment and cost apportioning. Certainly some amendments to make sure that we're in compliance with the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And some minor edits to the closed session section to reference section for members who are attending online in closed session. Just to make sure that we've cross-referenced the two for ease of understanding. And And then also, of course, since our January 28th meeting and the board report there where the members passed updates to remuneration, we included that language in the bylaw. And of course, updating our vision, mission and values statement to reflect the strategic plan so far. So with that, always thankful for Michelle for keeping us on track with these changes and her lists of updates that need to be made. Her input to this is invaluable. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Tracy. Board members, questions, comments on this report? Sandy, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only thing I want to float is, does the board want to see a change in where the closed session items are? I know it's a significant issue for the councillors from London in particular. I agree, it makes no sense to move it to the end of the meeting. Is there an interest in changing it to earlier in the meeting, say at the beginning? It doesn't matter to me, but it's certainly a matter for other people here. So I'm happy to hear the discussion and go with where people want to go with it.
Well, I'll start and perhaps Tracy can follow up on. Myself, the vice chair, and Tracy have had this discussion at least once. We're open to moving it around in the agenda on an as needed basis. Just depending what the subject matter is and what the time constraints are for the other board members. So we're kind of on a making the call on an as needed basis when we have our pre-meeting agenda review, and we try and make that determination then when the appropriate timing is for the closed session. But just to give staff and board members insight on where our heads are at. That's kind of a high level. I don't know, Tracy, if you had anything further.
Yep. And I would just add that I recognize that you're all representatives from different municipal councils, and a number of municipal councils do it differently. You might have some feelings and love to hear feedback on what's working and what doesn't work in those situations. So if there's a desire to change, it would be an easy change to make.
Thanks, Tracy. Paul, go ahead, please.
Yeah, and that was my first questions. Sandy just beat me to it about the agenda. And I know it's our township council, we have our closed meetings at the very end of the agenda. Because from a staffing standpoint, any staff that are not involved in the closed meeting can then go back to work, or if it's an evening meeting, they can go home. Obviously, that doesn't work here for the reasons that were stated with some of our board members having other meetings they have to get to. So personally, I'd like to see it moved early in the agenda. From a staffing standpoint, we have quite a few staff members here who come to the meetings, but who were not involved in the closed session parts. So we kick them out, and I presume they go somewhere and work on stuff and for an undetermined amount of time, which I don't know how efficient that is. It doesn't work for me. If I'm going to work on something, I got to know how much time I got to do it. And then when the closed session's over, say, okay, you can come back now because we may want to hear from you, or there's something that you could contribute. So to me, it would seem more efficient if a staff member says, well, I'm not going to be at the closed session. The closed session is, say, the first half hour or whatever. So I'll just keep on working what I'm working on. And then when I can come to the meeting, they'll let me know and I'll go and I can stay there for the rest of the meeting. So that's, if you're looking for input, that's my input. I would like to see it moved at least to the very early part of the meeting so that staff can be more efficient with their time rather than having to leave and come back.
Thanks, Paul. Jim, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree that I think the chair and senior staff can decide when that closed meeting should happen, depending upon what's on the agenda. I guess my bigger concern is with our friends, colleagues that are on the board from London. Has there been any thought about moving the start times up in the morning?
Okay. Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm not exactly sure what you mean by moving up our times. Is it the committee times?
So we start here at 9.
So 9:30, but
9:30?
9 help, or 8:30, or, you know.
If I can just sort of add my comment to, I like the idea of the flexibility between the chair and staff to determine what is on the agenda. I know at one time our board meetings were timed. We would have it, we would be, I think it was around 11:30. The meetings would end, and if our agendas kept to the schedule on the agenda, it would allow us to do all the work. And as a City of London councillor, our council meetings, or for instance, today we have our committee of the whole starts at 1. That would give us enough time to get to our 1 o'clock meeting. But I did like the idea of our agenda being timed. It seemed to sort of keep all of us on schedule. And just wondering if there was any thought to going back to that. But I think it's important to note that we don't always have in-camera meetings at our board meetings as well. So I really do rely on staff and the chair to coordinate the schedule. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Skylar, you're next, please.
I was just gonna say what Anna said, which is if it's 9:30 to 11:30, it works for us, but it's when we run past 11:30, we struggle. So that's all.
Okay, and I guess on that point, we can, when we're formulating the agenda, we can try and be mindful of what the overall time requirement might be. And I guess judge if we need to take something out of the agenda or modify it to keep us in a tighter time frame. Peter, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, and I just want to confirm what Councillors Hopkins and Frank said. We really should be, in our opinion at least, should be on some sort of timed timeline and time schedule, because we do have committee of the whole, or we've got council, and they usually fall on the Tuesday, same day as our board meeting. So we really have an hour, maybe an hour and a half after a meeting to prep for the next meeting, and it's not a lot of time. So if we could work on a time schedule, I'd be all in favor of that. Thank you.
So noted, thank you. Any further comments or questions from the board? Paul, go ahead, please.
So questioning the London councillors who recommended the time schedule. How would that work? Or my concern is it would limit input on different issues if we've got 20 minutes for that item, or however. I'm not quite sure what they mean. How you have an agenda with timed agenda.
Or Peter, go ahead first.
Well, I think it's pretty simple. It's just like a regular board, like a meeting of anybody's meeting. You say, okay, we've got 2 hours, let's go. So we've got 20 minutes for this presentation. We've got 20 minutes for that presentation. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Then we go to in camera. 2 hours. When I was a Thames Valley School Board member, I was the vice chair, so I ran the in camera meetings, and I ran all those meetings in 1 hour, and we were done. And Councillor Frank and I are on the Middlesex London Health Unit Board, and those meetings run. Scotty, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Those meetings run 2 hours, right? 7 to 9. We were out of there last week at 9, and Scott and I are actually trying to figure out a way to make them a little shorter, but I think we can easily run a meeting in 2 hours. If you work for a company, your boss says to you, you've got 2 hours to run this meeting. So you're going to do it in 2 hours. So I don't know why we can't work on the same schedule. Thank you.
So noted. Any other questions or comments? I guess I will add a comment. I too have worked in the industry situations where regular meetings are held, and it really depends on the issue that's being discussed. it depends on a number of things. It depends on the preparation of the members, and that's not a question. But it really sometimes depends on the detail and the gravity of the issues that are being discussed. And I would be concerned that quality of our discussion and the quality of our decision making would be negatively impacted if we adhere to a strict timetable. I realize that productive meeting is typically in a shorter duration, but my experience on this board so far has been that when we really get into the meat of an issue, there's a lot of discussion that needs to be had. So I just want to be cautionary about committing ourselves to a timetable that may work against us in the future. But what I would propose is that myself, the vice chair, and Tracy will examine this a little bit further to see what adjustments can be made if we can try and keep our meetings to a 2-hour time limit. But again, just being mindful that there's some issues, especially at budget, perhaps that would take longer. So perhaps at budget meeting, we might, when it comes time to talk budget, we may lighten up other parts of the schedule and just focus on budget. With that, looking to board members to see if that would be a satisfactory approach. Thumbs up. Not hearing anything to the contrary, so we'll continue to work on the I guess the arrangement of the agenda and on the timing of our meetings and how we load the meetings in terms of the agenda items. So those were my comments. Is there anything else? Paul, go ahead, please.
Couple of questions on the administrative bylaw item. And one kind of I've wondered about since I joined the board, because I haven't run across it very often in other organizations. And that's that we're supposed to, when we start our comments, say through the chair. And I see under 7.1C of the bylaw, it says all questions and points of discussion shall be directed through the chair. So my question is there a practical reason for this, or is this just a traditional way of speaking, similar to where in Parliament, they always address the speaker rather than insulting each other directly?
Well, as the chair, I see under one of my duties and my functions is to keep order during the meeting. So if we're to be, again, it goes back to preparation. If there's questions that the members have, then myself, and I'm speaking not only for myself, but the vice chair, but also Tracy and Michelle who prepare the agenda. We appreciate having the questions brought in ahead of time so that we have time to review and respond and come prepared with productive answers to make the meeting move smoother. Insofar as the direction of questions, yes, it is very appropriate that the questions come through the chair, because as chair, it's the chair's responsibility as set out in the bylaw to control the flow and the order of the meeting. And again, going back to previous experience, whether it's in the municipal realm or in industry, when questions are run through the chair, they're handled properly. More so than if the questions go across the floor, then there's too many. My experience has been there gets to be too many side conversations. Cross debate is not allowed in our proceedings. And I will share this one item that I had in industry when I was chairing a meeting. There was about 20 people in the room. There was a meeting preceding where there was an argument. That argument was brought into my meeting. and I shut the meeting down because it was too disruptive. And I don't foresee that being an issue in our meetings here. But without that person in control, which is the chair, according to our procedure, that's when things can get sideways, and I think we're all here for the right reasons, for the right purpose. And we want to use our time productively and cooperatively, so I think that those are my thoughts on why we have that set up the way it is. So I don't know if staff has anything else to add to that, or.
I'll just add to that as well. When we're talking about our administrative bylaw and rules of practice. Again, I'm thinking, yes, it's just tradition, but really it has that basis in parliamentary procedure that Dean mentioned, and we do follow Robert's rules as our fallback. So using those as our main guides, and to make sure that meetings are effective and reduces that crosstalk and things like that for during debate. So
I appreciate the clearing that up for me, and it all makes a lot of sense. It is more than just a tradition, and the reasons that for it, and Dean and yourself and past chairs have been much more effective of keeping the meeting well than the speaker of the Commons has been. My last question is, there's numerous mentions in the bylaw about appointment and the responsibilities of the agriculture representative. It's been 2 or 3 months since the deadline passed for applications. Have we heard anything from the province about who or if they're going to appoint an agricultural rep to this board?
yeah, through the chair. For our conservation authority, we have not heard anything about an agricultural representative. I've pointed out that there are several CAs across the province that have agricultural representatives appointed. You're correct. It was, I think, February 5th or very early February when the applications were closed. But we've not heard anything further about an appointment being made.
And we can follow up through staff. We can follow up with the ministry through ministry channels to see where they're at with that item. So, okay. Anything further?
I'll move the recommendation then.
You'll move that, Sandy. I'll read out the recommendation is that, one other thing I should note there, that we've got details in here about closed session, how we govern ourselves during closed session. So as a reminder to board members to please, when we do have closed session on the agenda, please refresh yourself of what our expectations are in closed session situations. So resolution is as follows for 6.2 administrative bylaw annual review. The board approves the amended administrative bylaws updated May 27, 2025, effective June 1st, 2025 for the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. Moved by Sandy. Seconder, please. Anna, any further discussion? If not, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving on. 6.3, provincial offenses officer designation for Shane Murray, Dustin Patrick, and Carly St. Judge. Look to staff to do that, please.
Yeah, certainly. Both Dustin and Shane weren't able to be here today, but I was going to hand things over to Joe to introduce Carly.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. We have Carly St. Judge with us today, we are recommending as an appointment as an officer under section 30.1 of the Act for compliance with section 28 regulations. So Carly joined us in November of 2024 as a land use regulations assistant. She's not unfamiliar to Upper Thames. She's volunteered in several of the departments and units throughout 23 and 24. She does hold a Bachelor of Science degree in environmental toxicology and a master's degree in aquatics toxicology. So Carly's just recently completed all the minimum requirements, including taking the Conservation Ontario compliance course to assist in her appointment as an officer. So she's here today, and we're recommending that she gets appointed as an officer so she can fulfill her roles and responsibilities as an assistant conservation officers.
Move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
So it's a three-part recommendation, so bear with me here, it's fairly lengthy. So provincial offenses officer designation, item 6.3. That pursuant to section 30.1 of the Conservation Authorities Act, the Board of Directors appoints Shane Butnari as an officer for the purposes of enforcement and compliance with the regulation enacted under section 29 of the Act and on Upper Thames River Conservation Authority owned or controlled property as a requirement of the position of land management. And further, that pursuant to section 30.1 of the Conservation Authorities Act, the Board of Directors appoints Dustin Patrick as an officer for the purposes of enforcement and compliance with the regulation enacted under section 29 of the Act and on Upper Thames River Conservation Authority UTRCA owned or controlled property as a requirement of the position of land management technician. And further, that pursuant to section 30.1 of the Conservation Authorities Act, Board of Directors appoints Carly Singh Judge as an officer for the purposes of ensuring compliance with the regulation enacted under section 28 of the Act and within the Upper Thames River watershed. Moved by Sandy, seconded by Jim. Further discussion or questions? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on, item 6.4, we have the water and erosion control infrastructure report. And Chris, will you present that report for us today?
Sure, yeah. It is here as well, so if there's any questions on it. The one thing that I should perhaps add is we've had some discussion related to the Wildwood Dam machine starting for the hoists. It was identified that the other hoist would be considered as a future project. I can add some clarity that we'll move forward with that this year so that we can get going on it. It's not possible for us to apply for funding for this year for that project. So that would be done entirely on levy basically, without the ability to get WECI funding for it. And I think that's the only thing that we need to add, but if there are questions.
Thanks, Chris. Tracy, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I see there's lots of questions. So
Okay, so I'll open it up to the floor. We'll start with Sandy and then, go ahead, Sandy.
Mr. Chair, in the background section, just for clarity for myself in any case is, so we approved 24, 25, 25, 26 WECI projects. So 24, 25, 1.6 million. Have we gotten the 50% money from the province for that 1.6 yet?
Yeah, most of the projects, yes.
How about 25, 26? Because it was a 2-year ask.
Just started the projects, so as soon as we approach the completion of the projects, we will start levying the municipalities.
Okay, so, but, I mean, it's,
On WECI, we got the approved budget.
oh, so we got 50% of the 4.4, given that it's only $5 million in total of WECI. I'm just trying to get a clarity on that piece.
Maybe,
Go ahead.
yeah. For clarity, the agreement lays out how that funding rolls out to us, and it rolls out in stages.
Right.
I'm not exactly sure of the exact percentages, but they give a certain percentage of it up front. And then with our reports, then we get the additional funding. They do hold some to the later reports, basically. So some of it comes up front and it's later. Was that what you were looking for there?
Partially. The bigger piece was, we asked for a lot.
Yes.
We got all our requests met.
No, but the information that's provided in this report is what was approved.
Going back to
That's for me.
well, yeah. Going back to the Wildwood discussion that you had earlier. Are there any significant downstream impacts that we need to be aware of, or any landowners further downstream? Because I know we've built a really good relationship specifically with the golf course in St. Mary's, and want to make sure that we're in communication with them if there's any issues related to the ceiling problem that you've identified earlier.
We are in constant communication with them when it comes to doing the operations. And what the plans are for that sort of thing, specifically of the challenges that we're faced with, but the impacts basically. And the situation this past spring was that they would have preferred us to, and we would have liked to have gotten to a lower flow sooner than we did, but it was low enough that they were able to start drying out. So it wasn't, from their perspective, not a bad, like it wasn't a significant negative impact to them. It was more our concern was more related to what the impact would be to the reservoir, dropping it faster than as I indicated before.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks, Sandy. Mark and then Jim.
I guess my question is just to see confirmation as to why their fiscal year is different than the January 1st to December 31st as far as being reported year 1, April 1st to March 31st of 2025. Just curious as to why the years don't match up to the calendar year.
Because that's the provincial year.
Yeah.
And the federal year as well. Yeah, that's the way that the funding is provided. It's the same with our other federal contracts.
You're good, Mark?
Same with our Section 39 funding. And
Okay, thanks, Chris. Jim, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just respond to Sandy's question there to Chris. What I hear from staff at the golf courses the past couple of years, the communication has been excellent. So I think it's real important.
Thanks, Jim. Paul, go ahead, please.
Through the chair, a couple of operational questions more than the funding. And the first item in the chart that was provided was about the hoist being removed from the elevator of Fanshawe Dam. So what impact on operations does having that removed and not being replaced at this point?
Go ahead, Chris.
So the main challenge with having that lift not functioning properly was that it was in our way. We couldn't hoist equipment out of the bottom to do repairs and replacements, that sort of thing. Now that we've got the actual lift removed, we have options available to us to lift that equipment out. And we have the ability to take a look at what sort of permanent solutions we would want to implement. The most expensive of those would be replace it with an elevator, which would allow for people to go up and down in it, or to put something in that would allow us to hoist, or even something that would more temporary to be able to facilitate the hoisting of, which is not necessarily all the time, but does become a problem when you have larger equipment that needs to come up and down. Obviously, there are benefits to having the elevator. You know, it's not just the people, but it would be their tools and that sort of thing that go up and down in that elevator as well. So the having it out of the way gives us some flexibility to actually undertake maintenance that's required down there. So that was our first and foremost. Once we determined that it wasn't able to be retrofit to bring it up to standard, the most important thing was for us to get it out of the way. It wasn't stopping us from getting.
Follow up.
My second question is, there's numerous projects for dam safety booms. Most of them are just for planning for future projects, but the Fanshawe safety boom has been installed. I saw somewhere a picture of one after one of the recent rains. There was a lot of debris caught by the boom, which is part of the purpose of the boom, or part of the additional effects. Maybe not a purpose, but an additional effect of it. I checked this morning and there was no debris left. So how do we get the debris removed from the around the boom so it just doesn't build up over the years?
So the debris's been a long-standing thing. I think the dam itself interferes with the passage of debris. It's a natural process and the dam interferes with that. So we've had problems before putting the boom in with debris. I recall, and some others that have been here since then, July of 2000, with the significant amount of debris that accumulated at the dam and around the shore in the parks, and required some rather extensive efforts to clean up and remove that. The advantage, as you were kind of working into your question around having the safety boom, which was its intended design, it actually keeps that debris, although not designed to do that, it keeps the debris away from the forebays where it can actually cause problems. And in this past event, the wind changed, moved the debris in one direction as the water was coming down. It's changed and it shifted around, and effectively most of that debris would have settled out, most of it along shorelines, and would have to be managed there depending on the impacts of it being that location. It is possible that we could be in a situation where we might have to proceed with some in-water collection of that. It wasn't necessary in this past event because the wind, and it typically does blow out of the northwest and push it away from the dam. And even in 2000, a lot of it went towards the rowing club, and had to be collected up there. I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, sounds like nature takes care of itself.
In some cases, we're not always going to be that lucky.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Chris. Any more questions or comments from board members on this report? Okay, if not, recommendation before us. Item 6.4, that the board receives the water and erosion control infrastructure WACI report for information. By Anna, second by Mark. Any further discussion? If not, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.5, we have the draft UTRCA encampment response strategy. Look to Tracy and Brandon to lead us through that, please.
Yeah, I guess I'll start off, and both Brandon and Brent are here. But really the strategy, I wanted to write something down to get some initial feedback from our municipal partners and other interest holders. We've been working primarily with City of London and in Ingersoll in Oxford County, where we've experienced kind of the majority of our more, I would say, complex encampment activity, especially on our lands with either municipal or county properties adjacent. So working collaboratively has been very important. We recognize that there's still legislation that's proposed. I think it was Bill 6, the Safer Municipalities Act. But we wanted to have our approach documented in a way that we can have these discussions with partners. And then also recognizing that having an encampment strategy was a recommendation that came out of our land strategy that we completed in December. So again, this is kind of the initial draft. There'll be more to come, and seeking input from our partners. But Brandon or Brent, anything else to add?
Through the chair, just I think maybe just go through questions first if anybody has any, and then that may sort of spark the discussion. I think the legislation that Tracy mentioned may, obviously will change our approach and how far things go, but that's, I think, just open up for questions to start.
Board members, questions, Paul and then Sandy, please.
Through the chair, and thanks to staff for bringing this forward and working on this. Is a relatively new issue, but it does appear to be an issue that's going to go away in the near future. And I apologize again for not forwarding this question earlier, but I just thought of it was, do we have, and I know this number is going to be fluid, do we have any idea how many encampments there are currently on Upper Thames land that we own or manage?
Through the chair, well, we know, we have 2 in Ingersoll, for sure, although the one is, for lack of a better term, barely on our land. We're talking a couple meters, on our land between Oxford County and CN Properties. Land is sort of it's a larger encampment that keeps expanding, so. Within the city of London, I can't say for sure, but I know we've got probably half a dozen on our properties, in sort of, in the river corridor area, as well as some other lands in London. And that's all we know of right now. There are some encampments on other properties adjacent to ours or in close proximity, but I would say mainly Ingersoll and City of London is what we've got now. Last year we had a couple in Oxford County, but they've been since cleared.
Sandy, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. So I recognize the pending legislation may change your timelines, but when are you anticipating or desiring to come back with a final strategy for us to approve?
Through the chair, I think, towards the end of the summer would be, or early fall. We'll talk to our municipal partners over the course of the next few months and come back with sort of a final strategy as well. I think the biggest piece in the strategy, as you're reading it now, is the whole notion or possibility of a court injunction. If the legislation passes through the provincial legislature, then that will likely not be a necessary tool, or a tool that we would consider as an organization. But that's in there now, as a possible tool that we could use.
The other question, Mr. Chair, is London, I believe, has a strategy, and I assume Ingersoll/Oxford County has a strategy. Is your goal to have a strategy that's reasonably consistent with those, so we're not working at cross purposes?
Chair, yes. We'd like to at least align our strategy with the basic principles, the human rights-based approach, et cetera. The biggest difference is that all of our land is private land. Whereas the municipalities, obviously it's public land. The other big difference is that we do not have the ability to provide those wraparound services and those other aftercare, I guess, alternate housing arrangements. So yes, we'd like to align it with the basic principles of those strategies, but we have some stark differences as far as how far we can, go, and we have some limitations in what we can do as well. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anna, go ahead, please.
Yeah, good to see this report coming to us. I know we've spoken about it in the past. I understand the regs aren't out yet, so we're still waiting for that. I do have a couple questions around what other CAs are doing. Are they coming up with their own encampment strategies through the chair?
Yeah, through the chair, yes. We've talked to other CAs and it varies across the board. Some of the smaller CAs don't have a strategy and they kind of go at one case by case. Toronto CA and some of the other larger ones, Grand River, they have strategies or guidance plans in place, and they work closely with their municipal partners as well, similar to what our approach and kind of the step we have been taking with City of London and Ingersoll and Oxford County. We have really good working relationships with all 3 municipalities, and it's But the approach is across the board, pretty much very similar to ours, human rights, based approach initially, and working through the process with the.
Thank you for that. I wanted to also make a comment. So this is going to be circulated. When will this be coming back to us? Is there a timeline for that, or is there an emergency to have this in place by a certain time? Do we
Through the
need to
chair,
do that?
Wouldn't necessarily emergency. We do have there's one encampment in Ingersoll that we've been working on for 3 years now. Pretty steadily, with, I'll say, little movement just because of the situation out there, and alternate housing, some have taken it, some have refused. And then we're in a situation where we don't really have much option right now without legislation or a court injunction on that site. So City of London encampments are within on our properties. Some of them are within the floodplain, and there's we're working with the city staff to determine what the definition of floodplain is in those instances in relation to their strategy. So I would say it's not an emergency, but it's definitely, there are 2 encampments, one in London, one in Ingersoll, that we would like to move forward with cleaning those up. The outside of the health and safety and the human rights of the folks there is quite a significant environmental impact right now, with trees being cut, garbage left. We've already spent quite a bit of money on the Ingersoll encampment to clean it up. So we would like to move forward on these as quick as possible, recognizing we do need to get back to communicate with our other municipal partners, and this legislation will help us. The provincial legislation, we know the Ingersoll one is pretty much at a standstill until that happens, or the authority as a whole, the board, approves the potential tool to go to a court injunction, and we know that's there's huge implications on that. So I would say early fall is when we'd like to bring it back, once we have a little bit more information from the provincial legislation and our partners as well.
Thank you for the update and the report. Just a comment. It's going to be interesting to see what our finding suitable shelter where we place people to. I think you made a good mention about the opportunity. We don't have opportunities for housings with supports here, and how that plan is going to unfold. Look forward to the report coming back. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mark, go ahead, please.
I'd like to compliment on how good the report is, and I think the one thing that's kind of goes without saying is that sometimes it gets down to the enjoyment of people living in that neighborhood as to how much they can sort of enjoy their backyard now that the warmer temperatures have arrived. They can see that there's campfires going on and people chattering and fighting all the time on the other side of their backyard fence. We have one in Woodstock, for example. The lady says there's 11 tents behind her house, but the odd thing is, on one side is houses, the other side is 3 industries. And the other side, it is the Upper Thames fields. And they've actually cut a hole in the fencing to get to this landlocked area, which is in essence a delinquent owner owns his property. So that's how they've gotten to the land. But they get to the land through the Upper Thames trails, through a hole that they've created in a fence to create this campground. So you might think it's ingenious, but at the end of the day, it comes down to who's got the rights. You don't want to be negative about who's got the rights. The people that live own their houses and pay tax, who want to enjoy their backyard in the warm summer months, or the people who are living only about 30 feet beyond their back fence in tents on property that's really landlocked and nobody wants to. And that's an individual situation. All situations are different, but to be able to not be able to enjoy their own backyard because people are living in this delinquent area.
Chair, yeah, we received, I had an email this morning at 7 o'clock come in from somebody who lives across one of the major encampments in the City of London. When are we going to do this? The tents are have been decreasing, but the porta potty is still there. And so these emails and calls come into us often, I would say weekly for sure, sometimes more, from the Ingersoll encampment to London. We've had a couple with Woodstock over the past couple of years, but not the one you're speaking of. So we recognize that we have a limited capacity here to move this beyond our property. And, you know, our thing is basically to work with partners, municipalities, to try to find a solution and sort of bring all the partners together, I think. And that's kind of what our role is, try to work through the process. We do have some, we've had really good response from London and the CIR group in the City of London, as well as some of the London Cares and some London Police have been fantastic to work with. And we've had some challenges with OPP in certain areas, that's for sure. But we just have to continue to work through the process, and hopefully the legislation comes through with the provincial government. Good.
Thinking a little laterally on this. My recollection is, and correct me if there's been a change in this, some of these lands were acquired years ago through, I don't know, Section 42 or whatever the heck it was. And at one point we sold the city some land. And I think I've seen a map that shows our land holdings in the City of London in the floodplain are not that extensive. Is that correct? Or is it the other way around? Where I'm going with this is, does it make sense for us to continue to own those lands? Given the fact that it's in the city has the greater resources in terms of support for this group of people. And rather than having two organizations overlapping, is there a potential advantage that the ownership be out of our hands and be in the city's hands?
Sure. That's a really good question and formulated a pretty good discussion. So you're right, we do still own a significant amount of land in the City of London, floodplain land. Yes, it was acquired through Section 39, I believe, floodplain acquisition funding in the early to mid 60s is when it kind of began. And I think 92 is when it ended and kind of fizzled out. Around 95 is when the last sort of properties were acquired. So we still own a lot of those lands: Woodstock, Ingersoll, London, West Perth, and Mitchell. Surely I'm forgetting areas, but Thames Center. But those lands are generally under an agreement whereby the municipality manages those floodplain or hazard lands on behalf of the authority. So technically, as per the agreements, the municipalities do hold the responsibility to manage those lands in a park-like recreation setting and for flood capacity, flood attenuation, so that they're not built on as they are hazard lands, slope hazard, floodplain lands, etc. So technically the municipality is supposed to manage those lands, including removing those encampments. And that's when we work closely with the City of London, Ingersoll, and Oxford County in those cases to clear those encampments. Obviously, the situation in London has gotten to the point where there's really not much room left to sort of house these encampments outside of, you know, Harris Park and Springbank Park and those kind of areas, right? So the space is limited. So the step now is, and what we're working with now is with the city to define sort of that flood line and those flood lines that they use to determine whether that encampment is in a floodplain or not. And those are some finer details that were sort of, last week I had a meeting with staff at City of London regarding this exact issue, so.
Sounds like it's under discussion and.
It's a discussion, it's a moving sort of target and getting those agreements updated. That's what we're working on as well with the municipalities, and that's gonna be a lengthy process, and that's, you know, what we're in for right now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, that's helpful.
Okay. Anything else from board members? Don't see anything, and I just want to add my appreciation to staff for dealing with this issue. It's, as we've discussed, it's sensitive and very delicate, and appreciate staff taking the time to work it through, think it through, and coordinate and communicate with our municipal partners. So we look forward to another report on this subject come the fall. So our recommendation, I'll read it out for section agenda item 6.5, recommendation that the board of directors approve the draft UTRCA encampment strategy to enable staff to receive input on the strategy from municipal partners and other interest holders to end encampments on UTRCA owned or controlled lands. Mover and seconder, please. Moved by Jean, seconded by Peter. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving to next item, section 7, reports in camera. We have none to consider this meeting. So we'll move on to section 8, reports for information. First one is 8.1, administration and enforcement. Under section 28, status report. Look to Tracy and Joe to lead us through those discussions, please.
Yeah, I don't have anything. Joe or Jenna? Oh, Joe, Jenna, any comments on that or available to answer questions?
See any questions from board members? Oh, Sandy, go ahead, please.
On page 2 of the report, I noticed 2025 permit activity, January to April, 88. In the table on the second page, 2024 is 219 is that for the same period or over 12 months?
It's over 12 months.
Oh, okay. So where I was going with that, it looked like a significant drop off in activity year over year, but it's not a year over year comparison. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Seeing none. Recommendation before us is that the board of directors receives the report for information. Moved by Sandy, seconded by Scotty. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimously. Next is 8.3. The assets, oh, sorry, getting ahead of myself again. 8.2 project status. Tracy has a report prepared for us there. Tracy, do you have any comments that you'd like to make?
Sure. I will just include again a discussion today, report back on the City of London discussion on our budget. Include that as status updates. And I did notice that Green Leaders Participating Schools, we did that last month, just mark it complete. I normally love marking these things complete. But certainly recognizing this is kind of our outline, and things will change slightly as timing progresses, but just so things are on the list, you can anticipate reports back accordingly.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Any questions for Tracy on this? Sandy, go ahead, please.
Just noting, it looks like it'll be a busy agenda in June because there's a couple of major issues coming back to us at that time.
Shift things around a little bit there as well.
Oh,
So
okay.
again, that's part of the process as we look at what other things are coming up. and to try to schedule our agendas so that we're not overwhelmed. Sometimes with other timeline constraints placed upon us, that's a consideration as well. So.
I understand that, but one of the things I think that we've talked about a lot is the land options. And that you've got scheduled for June, so hoping that one doesn't get bounced back. Thank you.
So noted. Thanks, Sandy. Any other questions on 8.2 project status update? Seeing none, recommendation is that the board of directors receives this report for information. Mover and seconder, please. Skylar, design, George, discussion. Call the question. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. 8.3, we are looking at the asset management program update. Authored by Mike, but I'll look to Tracy first before we hear from staff.
Yeah, thank you for that through the chair. You may recall we were required to have our asset management plan for our flood and erosion control infrastructure completed by the end of the year. But again, we're not quite aligned with municipalities here and that we're a little behind. We still need to build our asset management into all of our asset classes as an organization. Recognizing that building asset management planning into everything that we do as an organization is going to take some time. We want to bring some update reports forward, recognizing where we're at and where the next steps. So really our next step is to integrate software solutions into our asset management operations. Again, building that asset management awareness amongst all staff so that everyone has that understanding to continue to build. And then the third part is the natural hazard infrastructure. There was recommendations in the hazard infrastructure plan that look at a little bit more detail. So kind of those three areas of where we're heading. Certainly Mike's available here back of the room to provide responses to any questions as well.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Board members, questions for staff, comments? Don't see anything. As Tracy pointed out, it takes time to build up the database, and so we encourage staff to and support staff in their efforts to do that on behalf of the authority. Recommendation is that the board of directors receives this report for information. Moved by Paul, seconder. Marge, any further discussion? All the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. 8.4, Bill 5 and Bill 17, environmental registry postings. We have a report prepared by Jenna on this. She's available to answer questions on the report. This report is provided on the bills and includes, Bill 5 includes both the new special economic zones and changes to the Endangered Species Act. So I'll move over to Tracy and Jenna to expand on that report, please.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Just noticed that there was additional conservation bureau comments specifically on the Endangered Species Act that was not attached to the agenda, but I'll circulate that out after the meeting. Bill 5, I'll just kind of start with some general from a meeting that we had yesterday afternoon with Conservation Ontario, because Bill 5 was referred to standing committee. So it was standing committee on the interior that was hearing delegations on Thursday last week and then also yesterday. So Conservation Ontario was fortunate enough to get a delegation and Angela Coleman attended. Her comment was she was received much more warmly at this delegation than she had had on previous bills. So thought that was certainly a positive. And really took the opportunity to highlight kind of our CA's streamlining and permitting accomplishments and the importance of natural hazard management to protect people and property in Ontario. So I understand the clause by clause review That standing committee will be scheduled for tomorrow. And hearing in the news, reading last night, sounds like there's some changes to some of the bills that are currently being considered. As with most things, it really hits the road when we see the regulations come out of these bills. So future reports will update on any regulatory changes that may affect us. And I have anything else to ask? I mean, certainly, if there's any questions, we can provide responses.
Okay, open the floor to board members for questions or comments. Read online, don't see any hands up. Last call. Okay, seeing none. Recommendation reads that the board of directors receive the report for information. Moved by Anna, seconder. Jean, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8.5, strategic plan update, report, before the board. Either Tracy or Teresa can respond to any questions. Go to staff first with comments, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just highlighting that where we're at in the process. Partner engagement is underway with Platinum Leadership, who are consultants working with us on the strategic plan. So a number of partner interviews were scheduled. Mr. Wallace in the back of the room, I understand he had an interview as well. However, any information on either the interviews or the surveys, which have been circulated out to a number of our partners and agencies, as well as yourselves and past board members, to either complete or send along to other groups that you're working with, are all being collated and prepared by Platinum. We'll receive a discovery report to then inform our next steps. Ultimately, with that input, that'll be used to inform our priorities and goals, and then ultimately identify key actions and timelines through operational planning later this year. So certainly, this is an update for now. Get more information as we receive input from Platinum Leadership.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Sandy, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just checking through you, phase 5 that's listed on page 2. Is that the intent of management to bring forward the final draft strategic plan, or just a draft?
We'll see what information we have at that
Oh,
point.
okay.
Again, without having the information yet from Platinum,
Okay.
it's hard for me to guess, but we'll certainly have something back to the board in September regarding.
But where I'm going with that question is that the adoption of a final strategic plan will be this calendar year.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. That was one of my questions when I had my interview is what's next and when? So we're all keenly awaiting the reports forthcoming this fall. Any other questions comments from board members on this topic? Again, appreciate staff's diligence and participation from our public stakeholders, such as Mr. Wallace at LDI. If there are no other questions or comments, we have a recommendation that the board of directors receives this report for information. Moved by Scotty, seconder, please. Parge. Further discussion? All the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8.6, the May edition of the Thames River Current has been released for everyone's information and enjoyment. I know after this meeting, I will finally take some time to indulge myself in that article. Appreciate the work that staff does to put this article together every month. It's a lot of effort, but very enjoyable and informative to read nonetheless. Recommendation that board of directors receives this report for information. Moved by you, seconder Skylar. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to section 9, reports, committee updates, 9.1. The subject is Finance and Audit Committee. A report on the April 22nd decisions of that committee. I'll look to Tracy and Christine to go through the report and ask if Chair Sandy has anything else to add as well. So first, staff, please.
I'm looking to Christine.
The committee reviewed basically the financial statements for 2024 and had some questions for the auditor and for me, and we covered off those questions. The report discussed specifically some of the questions the committee had over variance between the budget figure and what actually transpired. And it does boil down to we spent less than we thought. The nutrient program got off to a late start. Some of the capital projects were underspent, as it turns out, or not. We didn't complete them by December. We had ambitious plans for the parks, for the campgrounds. Didn't get all that capital done, but still in progress. So that was a good part of the difference between what we actually transpired. And the committee also wanted additional information, which I hope I included is clear enough, about what happened to the reserves as a result of what happened in 2024, the financial result of what happened in 2024. So you can see in the audited statements, reserves went down in some places. Well, they went down in quite a few places. And the bottom line result is we've got about $1 million reserves for a $23 million set of expenses. Not a lot. So this is another overlaying factor to planning our budget for 2026, because we're just coming up to the midpoint in 2025. We're going to have to take a very hard look at what we've been doing in the last 6 months of 2025, what it's going to look like by the end of this year. That will factor in what we're thinking of for 2026. So yeah, the results are here. The committee had a good discussion and recommend their approval along with our auditor.
Thanks, Christine. Sandy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, one other thing to highlight in terms of the variance, in addition to spending less, when you look at the statement of operations, we had a very large land donation, which boosts our revenue, but it's one time for one, and second, it's non-cash. So it makes the bottom line look better from an accounting perspective, but not necessarily from a ability to spend perspective. The other thing that I wanted to highlight that I think we all learned during the discussion was that in the flood control reserves, there are sub records, if you will, or sub ledgers, and that each of those structures is broken out separately, which is different than some other conservation authorities, which kind of take everything in their levy and put it in one reserve. Whereas we do it essentially fairly, in which levies that, special levies in particular, that are asked for from municipalities are only spent on that municipality flood control structures, not just any old flood control structure. So it's a compliment to what staff have done to keep things, well, essentially fair. So we were, as Christine said, we were pleased with the work of our auditor, and we're recommending they be reappointed. I believe this is the last year of the contract, so your finance committee is going to be looking at what we're going to do down the road in terms of auditor. But to date, we've been very pleased with the work of CBAC and Associates. So happy to handle, Seaback and Company, really. Happy to handle any questions. If Christine, if I can't answer it, Christine, hopefully will.
Thanks, Sandy. Thanks, Christine. Board members, questions for Sandy and Christine on this report? Jim, go ahead.
Thank you to the chair. When I look at the defined purpose reserves, I'm just wondering why the campgrounds is so large compared to everything else.
Christine, go ahead.
The campgrounds have always operated on a. You have to be self-supporting. And they set their fees. The campgrounds don't get levy. So they are completely self-sustaining. And because the campgrounds have, they've got buildings and roadways and electrical infrastructure. They've been saving some surpluses over the years, and we're just finding last year, this year, next year, we're being able to develop some plans to upgrade and replace roads and necessary infrastructure. So their reserve has been building on purpose so that we can give them that they have the tools to keep their infrastructure in good repair and to keep attracting people. That's why their reserve is, they make money.
And I guess where I'm going with this, and I asked a question earlier, but if they are profitable they're making the money on the infrastructure behind the dams or whatever. But do they ever pay anything towards the repairs as if you were to take Wildwood, for example, where London's paying a large portion, St. Mary's will pay a portion. Is there any of those profits going back into paying for the structures that's creating their profitability?
The purpose of the dam is flood control. The secondary use of the dam is the reservoir on which the campgrounds operate. But if anything had to happen with regards to the water management, campground operations is absolutely secondary. Campers would not be allowed. Money would disappear, revenue from the campgrounds, because the reservoirs are there as an effect of the flood control.
If I could just add one extra detail to that and go back to when dams were built. The dams were built with a local funding arrangement that set that beneficiary. And that's what we levy based on.
Tracy, go ahead.
And then one step further to that, with any of our category 3 programs and service, we allocate out our overheads so that we get, in the case of campgrounds, substantial investment back in funds that are transferred to cover those service cost centers, that be through our human resources, our finance, IT costs are much reduced because of those category 3 programs, either the campgrounds or the programs like we're seeing through the phosphorus reduction programs and other grants that we're able to get. So having that allocation system again reduces those mandatory service costs, but then also contributes back into running the authority as an organization.
Paul, go ahead.
Another comment along that line is the campground operations province has allowed us to increase our fees to reflect cost recovery user pay, and as well as competitive with other recreation facilities. And that's not always the case with some of our other programs.
You mean like planning and regulation fees?
I didn't say it, but you did.
Suffice to say, it's fairly easy to read between the lines on Paul's comment. Okay, Anna, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Chair. I have a question around the reserves and the operating reserves in particular. How do we get them up? And just if you could review opportunities that we have to increase them. It's well set out that we need to increase them.
With staff on this.
I'm gonna give you one. One thing, so last fall, the budgetary and reserve framework that the board approved last October was the first step. And that was recognizing that our mandatory programs, now that we've got them very well defined, category 1, 2, 3, our mandatory programs have to be fully funded. We cannot go one step down the path of having adequate or appropriate reserves without being able to operate our mandatory programs with no deficit, maybe no surplus, but no deficit each and every year. So that was a big first step. After that, we are working on asset management plans, which are going to help tell us of the assets that we have, particularly category 1 type assets. What are we going to need to keep those operating over the long term? When we have a better handle on that, I think we're going to have, and at the same time, we're going to be able to say, well, look, we really don't have the reserves that we need. Let's sit down and decide what reserves we really need, what risks are associated with not having those reserves, what does it impact down the road, and then trying to set those numbers. And then we sit down and we say, how are we then going to fund these reserves? And I know some conservation authorities, they tack on 1%. They say, this is the levy we need to operate in a year. And they say, we're going to levy you 1% more, and it's going to go directly into reserve, and it's going to sit there and build, similar to what the campgrounds have been doing over a number of years. They've created surpluses. We're in a spending mode now for that. But because we we haven't adequately funded our mandatory programs for a lot of years now. When we can firmly do that, then I think we're in a position to go to the next step and to create a reserve plan. I think we're maybe almost there to start to talk about that. But that would be the finance committee, I think, doing some brainstorming initially, coming up with some options.
Yeah, thank you for that information. It's very helpful to me to understand where we need to go. So asset management plans is, yeah, it's coming, but we aren't considering doing what other CAs are doing, adding that 1%, or that may be a discussion, but we need to know where we're going. Thank you for that. Thanks to the committee, finance committee, for all the work to it's coming back to us.
Okay, thanks, Anna. Any other questions or comments on this report? Don't see anything.
I was just gonna add, again, just circling back to our legislative requirements, we are required to post our audited financial statements on our website now that they're assumingly approved today. They go on our governance page, and we also submit them to the province. Just for information.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Anything further? Last call. All right, seeing nothing further. Recommendation reads as follows: that the board of directors accepts the audited financial statements for 2024 as attached on the recommendation of the Finance and Audit Committee. And further, that the board of directors accepts the recommendation from the Finance and Audit Committee to appoint Seebach and Company as the authority's audit for the current fiscal year. Mover and seconder, please. Moved by Hughes, second by George. Final call for comments or discussions. If not, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, item 9.2, hearing committee. The members of the committee and board members that wish to stay, there will be a very short hearing committee meeting directly following the adjournment of this meeting. Just basically administrative duties. There is no application being considered at this time. Moving on to section 10, notices of motion for next meeting. I guess at this point, it would be appropriate to hear from board member Cuddy on his notice of motion. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. And I'll be brief since we're not tabling this motion. And also my seconder, Councillor Heeman's not here today. And this isn't an onerous motion, and it's not meant to be. It's just a reconfirmation of the discussion that we had at our board meeting with the mayor and budget chief, and you know, if we were to pass this motion at the next board meeting, we wouldn't be the only board to be doing so. Councillor Lehman told me recently that the London Police Services passed a similar motion to save somewhere around $1.5 million from the Police Services Board. So a number of different boards, Chair, are looking at this. And again, it's only a reaffirmation of what we've already discussed and what the message the mayor and the budget chief brought to us. And you know, I honestly, I think it's a responsible motion for us to do, and I made it as simple as I could. Okay, can't get any more simple than that. And I would like everyone's support when it's tabled at the next board meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Discussion. Just we'll receive that for information, and it will be included in the agenda for the June meeting. Thank you. All right. Item 11, Chair's comments. Pleased to see staff and board members engaged on multiple topics of significant interest. Budget being first and foremost in my mind, but tied closely to that are the asset management work that staff are doing. That is going to be crucial, not only in our short-term discussions, but in the long-term visioning for the authority. And looped into that is our strategic plan work that we're undertaking. So all these pieces, although they're significant as standalone pieces, they're even more significant when you tie them all together into the larger scope of what our duties and responsibilities are under the legislation and regulations as prescribed by the province. So thanking staff and the board for their continued work and attention and input on those matters. It's noted and much appreciated, and lots of work left to do on those fronts. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to members for their comments. Paul, go ahead, please.
My wife and I attended the Perth Children's Water Festival that was held at the Flats in St. Mary's last Sunday afternoon. And I want to thank Vanny Azano for the invitation to give me the heads up that was happening, and also thank staff for what must have been a tremendous amount of work to organize it. There was over 20 various stations and many different organizations that were involved, including the fire department, OFA. I lost track. There was a whole many there. Excellent attendance. We left halfway through the program, and Vanny was clicking at the entrance, and he was over 500 people at that point. So I don't know what the final number was, but tremendous amount of young families and young kids there. Most of the events were geared to people a lot younger than myself, but the highlight for me was the half-hour presentation by the woman from the Raptor Conservatory about birds of prey. She had, I think, 5 different birds there, and the information she provided was amazing, and her enthusiasm, to me, she was to raptors what Scott Gillingwater is to turtles. It was she obviously just was not only very knowledgeable, very enthusiastic about what she talked. So it was a great event, and I was glad And at the end, we got vouchers for 2 ice cream cones at Hearn's Dairy. So, it was a cheap date for my wife.
Well, thanks, Paul. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to say the same thing on behalf of Town St. Mary's. Thank you to staff for putting this on. It was a great event. I think Tracy told me the number got up over 800 people there. The weather cooperated a little bit. There was an enormous number of people got to use the accessible dock, lining up to get canoe rides and all the, safety instructions with everything there. It was really well done.
Excellent. Thanks, Jim. Mark, go ahead, please.
Just a little bit before that, a week or so, it was the Oxford Children's Water Festival, and it also involved the school board. So over 4 days, I think there's over 3,000 students coming through buses to the Piddock Conservation Area. So that was a very successful event, and Wichita was educational as much as it is fun for the kids. The other thing I wanted to mention, the city of Woodstock, we retired our Cedar Creek Golf Course, which people, the committee probably know, or the board probably know this, but what you don't realize is how many different phases, how many different projects have been going on to sort of turn that into parkland in essence. So the phase one this spring already was to plant 1,000 trees, and then they also built a wetland. And this past Saturday planted about 6,000 waterway type plants. I got a bit of a list here from Brad Hertner as to what was planted. So between Brad Hertner's crew from UTRCA, Phil Holst from the UTRCA, from should they say Ducks Unlimited, Rita Horan from the city of Woodstock, funding from what's called Environment and Climate Change Canada, and more funding from the Cowan Foundation and the Freshwater Conservation Canada. A lot of this work's getting done on what used to be now a retired 9-hole golf course is going to extend Southside Park in the city of Woodstock. So that's a very good news indeed. Thanks.
Good. Thanks, Mark. Sandy, go ahead, please.
Couple of things. Want to thank Damien and his staff at Wildwood for hosting myself for part of the day of their orientation of staff. It's actually very interesting, and it was neat to see so many enthusiastic new staff members. I was involved with some of the community engagement folks in the Medway preparing a turtle nesting site with, I think, a Green Leaders group. And then Jean and I with Friends of Medway, with April Scholes, a bunch of students who came out to plant in a very clay soil, very thick clay soil, landowner's property adjacent to the Medway. So it was a wet day, but the clouds broke long enough for us to get out there and get a lot of trees planted, and it was a fun activity.
Thanks, Sandy. Hopefully you had your gum boots on in the sticky clay.
I should have had.
Total for the next time. Mark, you had something
I
else?
guess I got a bit of a question or seeking maybe an update from Damien. What sort of is what he'd like to tell the board of directors about the guardhouse at Piddock and Woodstock, what happened there, and what kind of insurance coverage could be, and what maybe is a plan to replace the guardhouse there, if any has been made at this point.
Through the chair, I guess it was a week ago Sunday, early in the morning, we got the news that Steve Musgrove, the superintendent there, been notified by Woodstock Police that there had been an incident there. I'm sure if you've been watching the news coverage on CTV, and that there unfortunately had been a young man who was impaired at the time in his pickup truck and ended up literally driving the pickup truck into that gatehouse. Since then, staff spent most of last week, and thankfully we don't staff that at night to begin with, or who knows how that would have turned out. Usually staffed until 11 o'clock at night, and staff picked that up again in the morning around 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock or so. But last week staff were busy with kind of securing that site as far as making it safe for the public to come and go, both to the campground and also into the day use area. And luckily that wasn't really affected at all, that access to the day use or the campground. Right now, Steve has shared with us a plan to kind of get that island area where the gatehouse used to be cleaned up, and that last week also a big shout out and thanks to some of our IT staff here on site that were able to help with phone connections, Wi-Fi, getting our POS systems up again so that, and that actually did. We pretty much had everything back online for the beginning of last weekend, which was really great to kind of be able to get back to that as normal type of campground operation and having people kind of go about their transactions and that, and the staff going about their, their work days as normal with Wi-Fi and being able to use the internet and that type of stuff. At this point, we've been gathering quotes and information, documenting staff time, and that Brent's been in touch with our insurers to see about the different types of coverage we have. It's the building, it's the stuff that was contained in the building, the grounds around it. There's a whole lot kind of involved with that claim. I'm sure there'll be updates as we get details about that. Right now, we've started kind of looking at what are the next steps. One of our plans through conversation with the city of Woodstock has been a question of just having that gatehouse there, and with having the day use in our agreement with the city of Woodstock for the free access to the day use. We're even really a need for that. And one thing we had been looking at was the possibility of actually having that removed. It's removed now. But really, how is this going to make our campground operation look, and how can we go about with the most efficient way to have our seasonal and our overnight patrons access the park and come and go without having a gateway at the top of the hill there? And what does that mean now for us at the bottom of the hill as far as some perhaps controlled gate access, signage, perhaps using the store as maybe more than just a store or a place to rent your canoe or kayak, but that could be perhaps the park office, registration office, those types of things. So we're kind of exploring that now to see kind of what we need to do for our operation. We're in good shape this year to carry on with our campground operation for seasonal overnight camping, and as there's updates around the insurance aspect of it, and as we move along, we'll be sure to share those updates. So never would have thought it would happen. 20 years, I've never seen something like that. So thankfully.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, just again, thankful no one was injured or worse. And yeah, it was quite a surprise to receive the email from Tracy showing the roof of the building on the ground and the 10-foot walls were gone. So very, very thankful that that it wasn't any more serious than it was. And thanks again to staff for being able to react and pivot and literally pick up the pieces and get things rolling again. So much appreciated. Peter, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, and I'll be very brief. Just if we could turn our thoughts for a moment to the 5 young people, the 4 young women and the teacher who were killed last week on Cobblestone Hills Road, Cobbles Hill Road, and I appreciate, and I spoke with Councillor Heeman last night. I appreciate the motion that he passed at council last night to inspect the roads and make sure there's higher safety guards at some of these crossroads. And last week I was in Strathroy Caradoc, just out where I grew up, and there was an intersection where I've driven through 1,000 times before, and it's a two-way stop, and I pulled up and I looked, and kept on going. And I realized that, many of you, board members live out in the country. And, like I grew up in the country, and we take these roads for granted. And I can't help but think about those 4 young girls and that young guy, just driving home to Walkerton, and just a poor, somebody made a mistake, and they all perished. So, let's all be safe on the roads. Let's not take any of these roads for granted, especially these roads where you've got a two-way stop. Anyway, that's all I wanted to share with you, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Yes, and I think when we learned of the sad news this weekend, we were all touched in some way by the impact and the reality of that event, tragic event. I know myself, sometimes I take that route on the way home from a board meeting. And so it's a reminder to us all that, to keep safety top of mind. We're very busy, wrapped up in our daily schedules and thinking ahead about where we got to be next. And it's very easy to get lost, not be present in the moment. So thank you, Peter, for that reminder. And yes, our sympathies to the families impacted, as well as their friends and relatives in the community of Walkerton. Anything further from board members? If not, I'll turn it over to Tracy for her comments, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to a number of the board members as well. About safety and our staff orientation, both Sandy and Jean attending those orientation sessions. And I'm sure you heard a lot of safety messages there. We have a lot of young workers that we onboard each year. We're fortunate to have a number of returning workers, but certainly safety is a priority. Also wanted to mention a couple of the events that have been going on, things that we had planned. We had a very successful afternoon with the Clean Water Agency staff. Much staff filling this boardroom, and a number of our staff being able to provide some presentations here on the work that we do to reduce phosphorus in the Thames and all of our tributaries, highlighting our long record of water quality, and highlighting the work that we're doing with our landowners within the watershed to reduce phosphorus targets. Certainly, we ended the day with a tour out at the demonstration farm and heard lots of positive responses from that. Very happy to see what's going on the ground, as they're not able to often get out from behind computers. Seeing what this funding is doing and ways it's being put into practice has been a great opportunity. Highlighting as well some of the numbers that were mentioned at the Oxford County Water Festival, the Children's Water Festival. You heard from Mark the numbers for the school programming through the week, but over 1,500 community members attended the family night on Thursday night. Big shout out to Teresa and her team, Linda Smith. The organization that goes into it is amazing, and I think it's quite evident when you're at the festivals and seeing it firsthand. Everyone's got a job to do. Everyone's pitching in. Alan Dale, our past chair, attended the family night. He was soon recruited to be a volunteer to help out, quite willing to assist. So it was great catching up with him as well. As Jim mentioned, we did have over 800 community members in St. Mary's. Again, it's fantastic to see the community involvement, the number of young families, the diverse communities that are coming out to enjoy these events and really learn about what we do and why we do it. It's that hands-on educational experience to really get at everyone at all ages to make those connections to the environment. Yeah, certainly recognize that a number of members have been able to come out and support it. I know staff appreciate it so much when they see board members attending and engaged in everything that we do. I just wanted to mention too that next meeting in June is the Conservation Ontario General Managers meeting. So I don't plan to be here in person. I do plan to attend. I haven't seen the agenda yet, but for portions of the meeting. So we'll have, I think Jenna and Brent were going to arm wrestle who is going to be in this seat next meeting. So, so with that, we have a quick meeting for the committee following this. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Tracy? Don't see any. Thank you, Tracy. So last item, call for adjournment at 11:34, noting our next meeting will be June 24th, Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. So call for adjournment. Weaver seconder, Dean, Anna. All those in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you. meeting for today. The agenda was circulated.
Approval.
So Sandy moves, seconder Jim. All those in favor? It's carried. Okay. Conflicts of interest, declare them now or at any time later. Minutes of the January 28th meeting. It's circulated for our review.
Move it.
Move that. Sandy, Jim. Approved. Or all those in favor?
All approved.
Yep, okay. And any business from those minutes? It didn't impact anything. I guess before I call adjournment, do we have a sense of what our upcoming meeting agendas could look like, or is that too early to tell?
Jenna, do you know what the agenda might look like for the next meeting?
We don't have any hearings on the horizon at this point, so
Okay, nothing on the docket as yet.
nothing
Right.
know of yet.
Yes.
Okay.
If there's any rumblings or discussions yet.
So when the calendar in front of me, so when is our next regular scheduled meeting supposed to be? Is it June or
No, it's August.
August.
all right?
Yeah,
No.
definitely August.
Okay, no, I just wanted to get a sense for my own planning time allotment, so, okay, no, that's fine. So call for adjournment at 11:51.
So moved.
Mark? Yep, okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Good job.
The big sigh, Emily.
Yeah. A lot of